Hello, this is Reggie York. This is a presentation on evaluating alternative solutions in organizational decision making. Let's look at the decision making process for problem solving to show where this presentation fits. First question, what is the problem? How do you define it, and so forth? Second, how do you explain the problem so that you can find good solutions? Three, how can we assign responsibility for determining the solutions for the problem? To what extent should certain staff be involved at a particular level of responsibility and so forth. Number four, how do we evaluate alternative solutions? That is the presentation being made here. How do we evaluate alternative solutions? At the completion of this module, you should be able to, one, recognize alternative solutions from the problem analysis and employ the following tools for evaluating alternative solutions. These are four that we will be talking about in some detail in this presentation. Alternatives may become clear from the problem analysis. If lack of knowledge is the cause of the problem, training makes sense as a solution. If some kind of conflict is the cause of the problem, some kind of solution should engage people in some sort of process of interaction so as to improve their ability to get along with each other and so forth. Alternatives may need to be the focus of a special decision activity as you think about what it is you need in your situation. I'll ask you to hit the pause button and look over this and then come back after you've thought about it a bit. Okay, in this first situation, lack of knowledge would logically lead to training, right? I just said that actually a moment ago. Number two, it would seem to be that reducing the number of duties through more specialization would make more logical sense as a solution. I think in both these situations, the logical solution is pretty easy. I hope that was easy for you. There are some models for finding alternatives for solving the problem that we'll talk about here. One is what I would call a free-for-all dialogue. One is classical brainstorming. One is the decision balance sheet, and one is the solution comparison table. Each of these will be discussed in detail. The free-for-all dialogue, this is the common way to identify ideas. You just get a group of people together and ask for their ideas, and somebody makes notes or draws conclusions. You may get them together as a group, or you may be talking to them individually to get more and more ideas, but you just simply talk to people uh, about the situation and get ideas. This works better if the questions or issues are focused and the dialogue is focused. That means that as you ask people questions, you need to be clear about what you're asking, and those questions should be clearly attached to the function of finding good solutions to the problem. But you need also to attend to the issue of group climate. Do these people feel comfortable talking to one another if you use a group setting for your dialogue? Critical thinking, you've seen this before. Just have you hit the pause button, look this over, see if you need to reflect on it more. Okay, as you see, we're talking about clarifying assumptions. We're talking about providing a structure and so forth, avoiding errors in decision making, like bolstering and so forth. These are some of the things about critical thinking. We've talked about critical thinking before, and there's much more that you can learn about it in other contexts. Let's talk about classical brainstorming for a moment or two. Although we often use the word brainstorming to mean just doing a lot of talking about something, this term was originally used with a specific decision-making technique. Meaning, we often will say that, well, let's just go brainstorm about it. And that brainstorming session we may engage in may not have much of any structure at all, except people are going to get together and start talking. Brainstorming has the advantage of generating more ideas than normal and satisfying social emotional needs of participants if you do it particularly using a specific structure technique, which we will talk about in just a moment. Here, there are some basic rules of classical brainstorming. Uh, Criticism is ruled out in the first phase. There's the first phase of generating ideas. During this phase, criticism is ruled out. In other words, you ask people for ideas, but you ask that they not criticize each other's idea. The idea is to separate idea generation from idea evaluation to avoid premature closure on ideas. If I have an idea and you don't like it, we don't want you to be able to veto my idea. Let's leave it on the table and do some thinking about it and give it some time. Freewheeling is welcome. People are encouraged to add to other people's ideas and combine ideas from one person to another. Quantity is needed. So, again, leave the idea on the table, even if you can see some flaws. But analyze it. It may leave the table eventually, but not initially. The classical brainstorming process, I'm going to leave these out for you to review. Hit the pause button, look at these uh, steps in the process, and then come back. So as you can see, there's an orientation. There's a meeting of key actors. You sort of state the rules. For example, that uh, you don't evaluate ideas in the first phase. You just generate ideas. So evaluating an idea, criticizing it, and so forth is just against the rules. So you ask for ideas, you write them down, and then you convene another group to evaluate the ideas. So one group generates ideas, another group evaluates ideas. That is part of the structure of classical brainstorming. Let's look at this situation. What is wrong with this picture? In a brainstorming session, John suggests an alternative solution, but Bob interrupts and points out why this solution will not work. Of course, this is against the rule in classical brainstorming. In a brainstorming session, the group leader starts the meeting by providing his opinion about solutions. Well, the group leader in classical brainstorming should not be trying to control the dialogue. The group leader should be facilitating. That's a very important part of this process. Let's look at another option besides the classical brainstorming, the decision balance sheet. This is a method of listing pros and cons of a certain choice between two options and deleting items that are equal in the two sides of the sheet, the pro side and the con side. I believe this idea goes all the way back to Benjamin Franklin. I think it was attributed to him as one of the things that he did when he was facing a difficult choice. Um, I'm going to let you hit the pause button and look over this list of items and then come back. So this is a choice to be made where you more or less have just two options. So you develop two columns on the page, write the pros of the actions on one side of the page and the cons on the other. So you review items on opposite sides to determine if two are equal in value. If so, you strike through them. They cancel each other out. This is something that Benjamin Franklin, I believe, described as a method he used. Then you review what is left to see what action is taken. So basically, you are reducing the cognitive strain. You still have options, information on two sides, on the pro side and the con side. You then sort of intuitively look at those and see whether pros outweigh the cons as you try to make your decision. So here, again, just hit the pause button, look over these, and this is just an example. Okay, you got several pros and several cons. If you thought that a better house and present city are of equal value, then you'd strike through both of those. then you'd have 6 left. Then you'd see if there's some others of equal values on opposite sides and strike through those. And you could come up with the only 2 left would be better pay and uproot the family. Then you just got to look at those 2 and see which is more important. The solution comparison table is another tool you could use. This method is useful if you have clarity on the options and a good number of options to compare, but not an enormous number, not 20 or 30. Example, considering 8 applicants for a job vacancy. So you develop a table with criteria for comparison across the top and options down the side or vice versa. I'm going to show you an example here. Here is an example. If you will, hit the pause button, look this over and decide who has the best credentials for the job based on these criteria. Okay, so we've apparently given several criteria here. I mean, that is to say, ratings of excellent, very good, good, fair, and I'm assuming, although nobody got a poor here, that poor is one of those things. So if we give a, 4-point rating scale with excellent being 4 and very good 3 and good 2 and fair 1 and poor nothing, you could add up the score. You would find if you did that, that Mary has the highest score. That would be a score of 13. John would have a score of 11, and so forth. On that basis, then you would say that Mary has the highest score. If you didn't do anything else except look at this chart, then you would decide that Mary is the person to be hired. When do you do what in regard to these options? I would say, first of all, use free-for-all dialogue if your situation is complex and lacks clarity of information. You'll notice that the other options require a certain clarity of information about criteria, options, and so forth. A free-for-all dialogue makes more sense if the situation just does not have that kind of clarity. It's rather nebulous. Use the decision balance sheet if you have narrowed the alternatives to 2. That's what it's structured for. Use the solution matrix if you have several options and several criteria and information on each criterion for each option. As you can see, that situation requires more information than the other options do. That's the end of my presentation. I hope this is helpful to you.